good evening, one and all. I am welcoming all the participants and the speaker and other members on behalf of Madras Presidency Lawyers Forum. Totally, we have conducted 7 sessions earlier. Today is the 8th session by Mr. Vignesh on the topic of and various nearly 7 sessions on the topic of Passport Act and GST and summary suits, subsequently sexual harassment of women at workplace and IBC and NCLT and the Corruption Act, everything we have done previously. Today we are going to handle with DRT and other things by Mr. Vignesh. Introduction will be given by our member, Mr. Ravi Sundaram sir. Thank you.
Our Vignesh, one of the finest person who can one can ever come across, and he is a practicing lawyer at DRT and High Court, and he is the executive committee member DRT Lawyers Association, and he is a bachelor as of now, eligible bachelor, and many are behind him, and he has to choose. And so that is what he said. He has come from a respectable family, and he has given a lot of TV programs and YouTube programs regarding family matters and DRT and few other details to his account. With this, I introduce our great friend Vignesh to start the Sarfaxi Act procedures. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Madras Presidency Lawyers Forum for giving me this opportunity to present this session today. And the topic, as we all know, for today is Sarfaxi Act, on which I'm going to talk. And this Sarfaxi Act, the primary objective of this Sarfaxi Act is for a speedy recovery for the financial institutions and the banks to recover their money, whatever they have given to the borrower, in a faster manner. We all know that earlier, before this Sarfaxi Act, or there is another act called Recovery of Debts Due to Banks and Financial Institutions Act. Before these two acts came to be, enacted, the banks or the financial institutions will have to normally go before the civil court, file a suit, and then wait for years to get a decree, and then go before the EP court and then get it executed. And by the time they realize the money, several years would have passed. And there were many requests from various quarters with regard to the banks and financial institutions to the government for bringing in an act which can ease out their recovery measures in a faster pace and in an even more comfortable way. And in order to bring in a faster mode of recovery of the amount from the defaulters, came this Sarfaxi Act. And for the Sarfaxi Act, for any institution to proceed under the Sarfaxi Act for recovery of the amount whichever they have lent, they must be defined as a secured creditor for the purpose of Sarfaxi Act. And who all the secured creditor will be is normally the bank, which includes scheduled banks, nationalized banks, and a few banking companies. And recently, this multi-state banks are also brought in for the purpose of enforcing the Sarfaxi Act for recovery of their amount. And apart from these banks, there are also financial institutions like the public financial institutions, and there are also other non-banking financial institutions. This public financial institutions, to give an example, is this HUDCO, which we all know, Housing Urban Development Corporation that we have here in Tamil Nadu, and this TIC also we all know, TIIC. So So these are also institutions. These institutions are also secured creditors for the purpose of SARFAESI Act who can invoke these provisions. And apart from this, there are also debenture trustees and trustees holding securities on behalf of banks and financial institutions. In terms of consortium lending, what happens is consortium lending is one thing in which a group of banks normally lend money to borrowers, and these group banks, what they do is they appoint a trustee for holding the securities that are extended by the borrowers to the banks towards the financial aid that they have taken. So these are some of the categories under categories of secured creditors. Now we can go to what security interest is. Security interest means a right, title, or interest of any kind other than those specified under Section 31 upon property created in favor of any secured creditor, which means it includes any mortgage, charge, hypothecation, assignment, or any right, title, or interest of any kind, and so on. So for any institution or the bank to invoke the procedure, to invoke the provisions of SARFAESI Act, the first requirement is that they have to be a secured creditor, and then there must be a secured interest created in their favor by the borrower, and the debt must be a secured debt, and followed by this, for the bank to enforce in the sense like for them to commence with the recovery measure under SARFAESI Act, there must be a default committed by the borrower. A borrower who takes loan, and if he fails to make the payment within as per the terms of the contract, then it is deemed to be a default committed by him. Normally, the home loan or other loans in which the repayment scheme is on a monthly basis, it will be 3 months or 90 days. But there are also certain other repayment modes, like probably a quarterly mode or a half-yearly mode or annual mode. It all depends upon the facility and the nature of funding also. In those cases, even one default in making a payment will also be considered as a default, and the bank can straight away proceed with invoking the measures against the person for recovery money under SARFAESI Act. And once this default is committed, the account has to be classified as a non-performing asset by the secured creditor, followed by which a demand notice under Section 13(2) of SARFAESI Act will be issued. This notice will contain the nature of loan, the amount that he is supposed to pay as per the terms of the contract, and the default committed by them, and the declaration of that particular account of the borrower, the particulars of declaration of that particular borrower as an NPA, and also it also gives 60 days time for the borrower to come and discharge the entire loan as demanded in the demand. So what will the borrower or the guarantor who receives this notice will have to do is, like if at all he has any objection or some plausible reasons to say that the invoking of the very act is wrong, or whatever the reason or whatever the objection that he has, he can raise all these by way of an objection within 60 days from the date of receipt of this notice. So once this notice is received by the bank or the financial institution, by the secured creditor, he will have to reply to the notice either rejecting to the objection raised, or if there is any further reason he can definitely give those reasons, and he can send this reply to the objection, and that has to be sent within 15 days from the date of receipt of the objection. And probably if they don't send it, then certainly this will be a ground for the borrower or the guarantor whosoever it is, in the later point when he challenges the action of the bank under 17 of SARFAESI before the debt recovery tribunal. Then follows the next stage is probably the next stage is like when the borrower is not paying the amount, or probably when he doesn't pay the amount within 60 days, then the secured creditor can proceed under Section 13 of Sarfazi Act. 13 gives a set of procedures under which the manner under which the secured creditor can recover this money from the borrower. In that, under section 13(4) of the Act, the secured creditor will issue a possession notice under Rule 8(1), calling upon the borrower or guarantor to pay the amount, as well as a general caution will also be given to the common public, saying that the said property has been taken possession by the secured creditor for the default committed by the borrower or guarantor or whatever it is. Then apart from taking possession, the next thing what the secured creditor can do is he can take over the management. If it is going to be a business, then certainly he can take over the management of the borrower. And the next step, what it can be, and the further step, what can happen is, like, the secured creditor can also appoint a manager for managing the assets of the borrower. And apart from that, and thereafter, he can also demand by way of issuing notice to third parties who are liable to pay any money to the borrower to pay that money to the secured creditor. And he can also issue, and he will also issue receipt to that effect, and it goes on as it goes on further. And now, this secured creditor, while exercising these powers, there are many duties and obligations on its part to be followed. First and foremost would be is the recovery of the person who is going to act on behalf of the secured creditor will be an authorized officer, and this authorized officer will be a person in terms of nationalized banks are concerned. It will be a person whose rank is not lesser than the rank of a chief manager. And if in case of private non-banking financial institutions or other private banks or other entities are concerned, the authorized officer will be a person whose designation in this company is equivalent to that of a chief manager of a nationalized institution. So only the person of that cadre alone can be deputed as authorized officer. And a company or bank can have any number of authorized officers for the purpose of recovery of money under Sarfazi Act. And these authorized officers will have to strictly follow the procedures whatever as contemplated under Sarfazi Act for the purpose of recovery. Just a minute. And person to taking of possession of the property by the secured creditor, then comes it is like this, like after taking possession and before bringing the property for sale, the secured creditor will have to preserve the property, will also have to take a valuation of the property and fix a upset price for the property, and then bring the property for sale. Normally a sale normally a sale will be normally the secured creditor will issue a notice of 30 days before bringing the property for sale, and it is mandatory under Sarfazi Act for him to issue the statutory notice. And without issuing the statutory notice, then certainly he cannot bring the property for sale. Normally, this sale notice is issued under Rule 9(1) of SARFAESI Act. And in terms of so far as these procedures are concerned, there are the Act stipulates certain procedures that are to be followed, and there are also rules appended to it, which all have to be meticulously followed by the securitator. The manner how he has to issue the notice, the content, what the possession notice or the sale notice are issued should contain, all the details that each and every notice should contain. All these are governed by the security interest enforcement rules. And once these procedures are followed, then certainly the action, whatever the securitator takes towards recovery of the money, will be upheld by the competent courts. Now, what happens is the moment this borrower is issued with a possession notice or a sale notice or demand notice, then certainly he will try to establish. He will try to challenge. Normally, he will try to challenge these notices. Normally, a demand notice issued in the 13(2) of SARFAESI Act cannot be challenged. It is a demand notice, and therefore probably it cannot be challenged upon immediately after receiving it. But probably once until a possession is taken, the content or the validity of the demand notice cannot be challenged. And certainly, once the possession notice is issued, the borrower or the guarantor or any person aggrieved by any of the measures that are taken under the SARFAESI Act by the securitator can approach the tribunal, concerned tribunal, that is the debt recovery tribunal, under Section 17 of SARFAESI Act, wherein he can raise all possible defenses. Normally, like the defenses would be on technical aspect, or he can also raise it on substantial question of law, say like with regard to this mortgage, with regard to the lending of the loan, with regard to the quantum, and all other aspects. And one crucial section under SARFAESI Act is that Section 31 of the Act, which lays down certain exemptions to this Act. And these exemptions, that is, the provisions of the SARFAESI Act, will not apply in certain cases, and these cases are listed in Section 31 of the Act. And those are a lien on any goods, money, or security given by or under Indian Contract Act. Then pledge of movables within the meaning of Section 172 of Indian Contract Act. Third will be creation of any security in any aircraft as defined in Clause 1 of Section 13(2) of Aircraft Act, and creation of security interest in any vessel as defined in Clause 55 of Section 3 of Merchant Shipping Act. Then any rights of unpaid seller under Section 47 of Sale of Goods Act 1930.
Or sale, attachment or sale under the first proviso of Section 61 of Code of Civil Procedure. And then comes any security interest securing repayment of any financial asset not exceeding 1 lakh rupees, and any security interest created in agricultural land. And then comes this any case in which the amount due is less than 20% of the principal amount and interest thereon. So this 31 stipulates these 9 heads under which the provisions of the Act cannot be, the 9 instances or the 9 aspects on which these provisions of this Act cannot be applied. And then comes Section 34. This is again another crucial section so far SARFAESI Act is concerned, which houses the jurisdiction of civil court. This Section 34, as per this Section 34, no civil court shall have jurisdiction to entertain any suit or proceedings in respect of any matter which the debt recovery tribunal is empowered to decide under this particular act. Probably normally a borrower cannot challenge the demand notice or the possession notice or the sale notice issued under SARFAESI Act before any civil court of law or any other court. He'll have to challenge it only before the DRT. And in other aspects also cannot be certain other aspects, for example, over which DRT has jurisdiction. Those aspects cannot be challenged there before the civil court. And then comes section 35 of the act, which says that this act will override all other laws. And then comes this limitation act, and the secured creditor, for the purpose of invoking this act, will have to satisfy himself that he will have to satisfy that the debtors against which he is proceeding is within period of limitation as prescribed under limitation act, which in case normally this is a secured debt, so in case this will be 12 years from the date of the debt he'll have to enforce. And further section, then let's go to section 37 of SARFAESI Act, which says that this application of other law, which says that application of other acts or laws are not barred, which means that this provisions of SARFAESI Act are in addition to and not derogation to other act, which means the banks or the institutions can parallelly proceed against the secured creditor both under SARFAESI Act or and under the other act, which is RDDB Act, the Recovery of Debts Due to Banks and Financial Institutions Act, and the other act is Companies Act. And under all these three acts, the banks can parallelly proceed against the secured creditor for the purpose of recovering and taking appropriate recourses for recovering the money. And the main one aspect which I haven't covered is with regard to sale of property under the SARFAESI Act. So far as the sale of property under SARFAESI Act is concerned, the bank normally issues a notice of sale, which is 30 days, calling upon the borrower or the guarantor to come pay the money within 30 days and then redeem his property. Now, this provision has been amended to the effect that earlier it was the borrower or the owner of the property can pay the entire principal and interest within the date fixed for sale. Now, this has been amended as the borrower or the owner of the property will have the right of redemption over the property, provided he pays the entire money due before the date of publication of the sale notice. Earlier it was before the date of sale of property. Now that has been amended to as before the date of publication of sale notice. That is quite a crucial aspect as far as the sale is concerned. And the normal procedures that are to be followed in terms of a fixture of possession notice are concerned, and with regard to the service of possession notice, service of sale notices are concerned. Normally, it has to be served to the borrower and the guarantors to their last known addresses, and the notices will also have to be affixed in the property in a conspicuous part of the place. Apart from that, these notices will also have to be published in newspapers, one in vernacular and the other in the local and the other in English, having wide circulation in the locality. And these are some of the aspects which the secured creditor will have to follow. And normally, when the notice is issued, probably a possession notice or sale notice is issued, the borrower or the guarantor or any person aggrieved will normally go approach the DRT under section 17 of the Act specific format or the appendix is given to the act under which the application has to be filed, and he'll have to call out the reason or the grounds that whatever he has made out, what are the that he had made out for getting that particular sale notice or the possession notice set aside for any illegality or whatever that has been committed by the secured creditor. Then comes section 18. Section 18 is the appeal procedure under which any person who is aggrieved by any of the order passed under section 17, could be either bank or the borrower or a guarantor or any third party, to approach the debt recovery tribunal under an appeal. Normally what happens is under section 18 of the act, when an appeal is filed, the provision lays down certain conditions. If it is going to be a borrower or a person who has interest over the property which is brought for sale, and if he is preferring an application under section 18 before the debt recovery tribunal, agreed by before the debt recovery appellate tribunal, then certainly as per section 18(1), he'll have to file the application before the debt recovery appellate tribunal, and the debt recovery tribunal cannot entertain his application unless he makes a pre-deposit of 50% of the amount demanded in the notice whichever he challenges. And this 50% can be reduced to not less than 25% by the debt recovery tribunal for reasons recorded in writing. And unless he complies with this condition, his application cannot be entertained by debt recovery tribunal. And followed by this, any order passed by and any order which is to be and any person who is willing, who is agreed by any of the order passed by the debt recovery appellate tribunal, can go before the High Court challenging the order passed by the debt recovery tribunal, and then any person agreed by any of the order passed by the High Court will have to approach the Supreme Court for appropriate remedy. And this is the normal hierarchy under which these provisions or the procedures or normally the actions of the banks or the secured creditors are challenged. And this is the hierarchy of courts normally the person's approach. And one important section which I had to say is section 1310 of the SARFAESI Act. 1310 is a provision for is a provision for the secured creditor to invoke in cases where after the sale, if the secured creditor is not fully satisfied with the sale proceeds of the assets, then he can file an application under section 1310 under this under this provision before the debt recovery tribunal or competent court. Why competent court is the minimum threshold limit for invoking the provisions of the SARFAESI Act is 1 lakh, so far as the banks are concerned. And so far as the NBFCs, non-banking financial institutions are concerned, the threshold limit is, earlier it was 1 crore and now that has been scaled down to 50 lakhs. So in case of a bank to invoke the provisions of SARFAESI Act, then the debt due including principal and interest should be over and above 1 lakh. And so far as the non-banking financial institutions are concerned, for them to invoke these provisions under the SARFAESI Act, for them to recover the money, the minimum threshold limit should be over and above 50 lakhs. So only then they can proceed. And when there is a shortfall after and probably when there is when the secure creditor is not fully satisfied with the sale proceeds of the sale secured asset, then he can file an application to section 1310 before the competent court or before the DRT for recovery of the balance amount from the borrower. And the another aspect so far as and the other aspect another provision is section 1313 of the SARFAESI Act. What this 1313 says is, once a demand notice under section 13.2 is given, then by virtue of this section 1313, the borrower or the guarantor, after the receipt of this demand notice, is barred from transfer by way of sale, lease or otherwise any of this secured assets referred to in the notice without prior consent of the secured creditor. So in spite of receipt of this notice, any transaction that is carried out, then certainly those transactions will be held as nullity in the eye of law. And now let's go to the next provision, that is section 14 of SARFAESI Act. This section 14 of SARFAESI Act is invoked in cases where there is a resistance in taking possession of the property. Normally the possession could be either symbolic or actual. Normally what the banks or financial institutions do is they take symbolic possession, because symbolic and actual, both the possessions are considered as one. There is no dichotomy, is what the Supreme Court has said in Madia Chemicals case. Since there is no dichotomy, these institutions, they normally they take symbolic possession and then follow further with the provision, selling the property and realizing the money. After realizing the money, what happens is they'll have to put in the auction purchaser into in possession of the property. So what happens is there will be resistance. There will always be a resistance while going and taking physical possession of the property. So for whenever there is a resistance, then the bank or the financial institution will take aid of the state machinery under the section 14 of the Act. They file an application before CMM, that is Chief Metropolitan Magistrate, in case the properties are situated within city limits, and in case where the properties are situated outside city limits, then it will be the district magistrate. They file an application, and so far as this orders that are being passed under section 14 by the CMM or the district magistrate is concerned, it is purely administrative in nature. They do not go into merits or demerits of the matter. All that they'll have to do is they'll have to check whether the bank or the financial institutions have followed the basic requisites that are sought for under section 14(1) of the Act. The section 14 of the Act mandates the secured creditor to file an application accompanied with an affidavit, in which they'll have to mention the particulars of the loan, the quantum that has been availed, the particulars of the secured asset, and the proof for security interest that is created in favor of the secured creditor, and then the total outstanding amount that is due and payable, and the date of when the particular account was declared as a non-performing asset. And then they'll have to come up and they will also have to mention the particulars of the demand notice issued under section 32 of SARFAESI Act, and if at all whether they received any objection or representation or any notice from the borrower or any third party. and then comes, and then they'll also have to mention about whether any repayment has been made pursuant to the issuance of these notices. And these are some of the, these are some of the details and that they are required to mention in the application and the accompanying affidavit. After mentioning and filing of this application, normally the Chief Metropolitan Magistrate appoints here in, normally in city limits. What happens is the CMM normally appoints an advocate commissioner to go take possession of the property and hand it over to the authorized officer. In case of the district magistrate is concerned, normally he deputes a Tahsildar to go take possession of the property, hand it over to the secure creditor and report complaints. And this measure also, normally section 14 is very crucial so far as this is concerned. What they say is any order that is passed by the Chief Metropolitan Magistrate or District Magistrate in section 14 cannot be questioned before any court of law. It specifically says, that is 14.3, it specifically says no act of Chief Metropolitan Magistrate or the District Magistrate done in pursuance of this section shall be called in question in any court or before any authority. However, this act of CMM cannot be questioned, but the act of filing application under this procedure, under this provision before the CMM or the district magistrate by the secure creditor can always be questioned, and subsequent the action that they take based on this order also can be questioned before DRT. And the other another provision, that is 17.4a of SARFAESI is concerned. That is a specific provision which is brought in by the latest amendment, in and by which normally the tenants or any third parties who are residing in the premises can normally approach the DRT agreed by measures, any of the measures taken by the secure creditor under the Act. What the 17.4a says is, earlier there was a confusion. Earlier there were too many confusions whether the tenant will be deemed as a third party and whether he can invoke the measures. And there were many conflicting judgments which came wherein certain courts said that a tenant will not be deemed as a third party and he cannot invoke the measures. And certain courts said that yes, he comes well within the definition of a third party and even he can also proceed. To give a quietus to all this issue, this specific provision was brought in. And under this provision, a tenant can knock the doors of DRT, agreed by challenging the measures that are taken by the secure creditor, which affects his right of tenancy over the property. And it also lays down a certain set of procedures which he will have to satisfy to show his bona fides, that that his tenancy is valid and intact in the eye of law, and so on. So unless if he is able to satisfy all those requisites, then certainly the DRT will come to his aid, and so far as his tenancy and other rights to that effect is concerned, will certainly be protected by the tribunal. And I think I have covered almost all the important provisions. I think with this I can conclude this session for the day, and I would like to proceed with question and answers if at all any. for bringing in a solution for that. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yeah. Name, please.
Hello, sir. Vignesh here. I've just concluded my session. Let us now go on to the question and answer session.
Okay. Any questions? I think you have made everything clear. So there is no questions asked by anyone.
I have questions, sir. 1 minute.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, unmute yourself.
There was one provision which was under 31, where you said if the principal is less than 20%.
20%. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. There is one scenario where if we come to OTS,
Okay.
and then if we have paid more than 80% on the OTS, still will the SARFAESI stand there?
No, once when we are clearing the debt under OTS, then certainly there is no question of them invoking the provision, right?
No, what happens now? I enter into OTS,
Okay.
and I have paid 80% of the OTS,
Okay.
and remaining 20% I'm yet to pay, and I seek times sometimes and for some time, and
Okay.
then but the bank says they will not grant time and they proceed under SARFAESI.
Okay.
So will I stand under that? I believe that provision
OTS
is
is concerned.
31J or K.
Yeah, certainly. For that, we'll have to just check with the case on hand is concerned. Like if it is going to be less than that 20%, if our case is falling within that provision, then certainly we can take the plea in future whenever the bank initiates the measures under SARFAESI is concerned. But normally, I feel that whenever there is a OTS given, the bank there will be a substantial waiver also.
Yeah.
So what happens is when this.
So when substantial
What happens is when we don't comply with the OTS, then certainly the waiver, whatever the bank has given, will also go off. Then certainly, no, ultimately we won't be coming within that particular provision is what I feel. Probably it all depends upon case to case.
Okay.
Mr. Sundara Vadivelu. Mr. Sundara Vadivelu, you can unmute yourself and question.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Good evening to all our members, sir. Sir, my question is.
Yes, sir.
Sir, in a case, one of my client purchased the property under SARFAESI Act.
Okay,
it was
sir.
guarantor's property was brought in action by the SBI Assets Recovery branch.
Okay.
Actually, the guarantor has leased out the property to some industry.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm hearing, sir.
Please. Is it audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your voice is audible.
Guarantor has leased out the property to some industry.
Okay.
Only symbolic delivery has been made.
Okay.
The purchaser has been put into trouble. Now the tenant is not willing to vacate the premises. Can I approach the magistrate court for taking delivery of the property, physical delivery of the property?
The subsequent
Is there any
purchases.
time limit?
Yeah, I'll tell you, sir. Yeah, I got your question. The auction purchaser cannot go before the CMM, but rather it is the bank who can go before the CMM, file an application before CMM or the district might file an application for 14, and then execute and get the take physical possession of the property, and then he'll have to hand it over to the auction purchaser. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to insist the bank to go take possession and hand it over to you.
Mr. Suresh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, shall I proceed, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Vignesh, sir.
Good evening.
It is very great to listen that you are explaining as section-wise. It is very helpful to me. You know very well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
And I have two doubts. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And first thing is you told about limitation. Can you explain me?
Yeah, limitation is concerned. So far as the provision of SARFAESI Act is concerned, the bank or financial institution can enforce these provisions, provided it is well within the period of limitation. Normally, secured debt means debt by normally a mortgage deed would have been executed, and so far as the limitation for a mortgage is 12 years. Within 12 years from the date of execution of that mortgage deed, then certain the secured creditor can proceed against the borrower for recovery of that money. Probably in cases where this 12 years has lapsed, then they cannot proceed, is what I wanted to say. Suresh, sir?
Yeah. Anyone? Mr. Parni?
I think Vignesh has given all of us a bird's eye view of the entire enactment, procedures, practice, the whole thing. I don't have any further queries. I just have to.
You can give your impression.
Yeah, I think it was a fantastic to sort of put in the whole act, the procedure, the various jurisdictions of the DRT, DRAT, 14, everything within a span of about 45 minutes. I think was very commendable on Vignesh's part to give us this like a holistic view of the act and the practice. So for that, I think all of us have to thank him for the effort that he's put in.
Yes.
And the organizers of the meeting for giving all of us the opportunity to get a little insight of the DRT practice.
Yeah, this Madras presidency give opportunity to the first timers all the time. And out of these 9 speakers, all of them are first timers.
Oh, fantastic!
So we are encouraging. We thought of calling the eminent personality a little later, and now we are concentrating only on the upcoming people like Vignesh and other people like. So anyway, thank you for your wonderful impression. This will encourage them to do more and more. Thank you, Ma. Thank you. See, one person read me. Please change your name. Then I'll give you the opportunity. Without name, we cannot give you. Read me. You just go to the participant and then you can give. Now, Meenakshi Sundaram. Sundaram Meenakshi. You unmute yourself.
Okay, dear brother Ravi Minasunam, thank you for the opportunity of being a part of this Madras Presidency Forum. As you said, you are wonderful in giving the new entrants an opportunity, and I am part of that new entrant. I get great view of many factors, getting to know more things on it, getting to know more people. Lion Vignesh did give an insight view of how the DRT works, or probably many sections where it stresses on its importance. So all these things is definitely an important factor to me, and I'm lucky to be a part of this. As I said in the previous call, this is my second one, so I will observe for a couple of sessions trying to understand.
We need your questions.
So no, I don't have much questions, so I thought I'll leave it as an impression, brother.
Okay, fine.
Okay,
Fine,
so thank you, brother.
And read me. Kindly change your name. I'll give you opportunity. There is one person who has raised the hands. I've unmuted.
Sir, I am Suresh again.
Yeah.
I am Suresh again. Sorry for second time. I am getting the opportunity. Vignesh sir.
Yeah.
Only one more doubt. You said about 17(4)(a), the new amendment. As per that, you are saying that tenant having some opportunity before DRT.
Yes.
Can you explain me whether it is new one?
New in the sense that it had come a year or two before itself, not the latest.
So why I am
Earlier, whosoever it is, any person, say the borrower, guarantor, third party, tenant, whoever it is, they normally go before DRT only under section 17. Now a specific provision is being brought under 17(4)(a). This provision is exclusively for the tenants to approach the tribunal. So probably
you can understand my question, because in CMM we are having some practice of intervening the proceedings.
Okay.
For that only I am asking. Earlier I came to know that Supreme Court has denied the stand of the tenancy, whether it is existing or it is overruled.
No, earlier there was a judgment of Supreme Court in Nippon's case saying that the provision of SARFAESI Act will override all other, will not override, and is what the impression that was given by the Supreme Court. Later on, a clarification was also given to the effect, saying that later on in Vishal and Kalsaria, that is the judgment. In that judgment, the Supreme Court said, first of all, any person whoever claims him to be a tenant or lease right holder, he'll have to first establish that his tenancy right or legal right is valid in the eye of law. For that, a set of guidelines were given, post which this amendment came into force. And once he fulfills all these requirements, then certainly his tenancy and other aspects alone will be taken care by the court. That will be protected by the court. And so far as the applications or the objections that are being filed before CMM is concerned, that cannot be done. And normally the CMM or cannot entertain any application from any third parties in the name of filing any obstruction petition, all that. Happening probably our advocates are trying to bring in new jurisprudence to that. But as far as the provisions are concerned, it doesn't give any powers for CMM to decide all those applications. It is purely administrative in nature. Once an application is filed, the CMM will have to just look into whether he has fulfilled whatever the requirements that are sought for under 14. If all those requirements are fulfilled, then certainly he can pass an order appointing an advocate commissioner to take the handover. So rest of the obstruction, all other petitions, he cannot entertain.
Thank you, Ganesh.
Thank you.
And the person who has raised hands first, read me, you can, but you have to change your name.
Sir, hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir, Gopi, sir.
Gopi, you have to change your name. Kelanga.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, can I ask two questions, sir?
Yes, sir, please, sir.
Sir, first in respect of section 14,
Yes,
recently I received one eviction notice from Tahsildar based on the collector, Chennai.
Okay.
Now, when you are giving lecture, CMM in city limit, only CM only have power.
Okay.
Now, in city limit, the district collector passed the order directing the Tahsildar to evict the property from under the SARFAESI Act, section 14.
Okay.
Whether it is valid or not.
I got your question.
Whether any judgment is there.
I'll tell you, sir. 14 says, section 14 of SARFAESI Act says, the authorized officer can approach either the CMM or the district magistrate. The choice is for the authorized officer or the secretary to select. He can go before the CMM or before the district magistrate.
So both of them
Here, in your case, he had gone before the district magistrate for the simple reason that the CMM, the jurisdiction of CMM is different. We all know. Like now, this jurisdiction of Chennai limit has been extended up till
Soaring
in Allur and all other aspects. So the CMM jurisdiction doesn't extend till Soaring. The jurisdiction with regard to CMM is concerned, it is restricted only to that city limit alone.
Okay. So in respect of second,
Yeah.
now the Supreme Court announced some judgment in respect of Cooperative Bank also approached the SARFAESI Act.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Whether you can give some opinions on that.
This came out after a long time litigation, sir. Like in 2003, an enactment was brought in wherein the cooperative, multi-state cooperative banks were also brought in within the ambit of SARFAESI Act. That was challenged, and after several years, now the Supreme Court has said even they can also proceed under SARFAESI Act. Is what they have said. So from henceforth, they can also proceed under SARFAESI Act, like other banks and financial institutions.
Whether this is comes under the financial bank or non-financial bank, you say at the time of lecture. Only
this multi-state cooperative bank also will also come within the definition of secured creditor only.
Kanmani, you can unmute yourself.
Is the previous question has answered?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. My question is that, Mr. Vignesh, sir, the demand notice is for 1 crore, if assuming.
Okay.
At once we are filing the SARFAESI appeal before the DRT.
Okay.
They are blindly demanding the applicant to deposit 20% or 25% or something.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. That is the basic norms has been fixed by DRT in DRT proceedings. If so,
Okay.
I was succeeded in that first proceedings. Subsequently, again the banking official has raised another second round of litigation for the same issue.
Okay.
If so, I am again to pay. May I complete, sir?
Yes, sir. Please, you complete.
Again, I am compelled to pay another 25% or 30%. If so, without justifying or without judging the certainty of that demand notice, I am compelled to pay 50% or more than that. How I can establish my case, sir? Is it correct from the part of DRT? Without blindly they are fixing a basic amount to be deposited as 20% or 30%. Is it correct?
Yeah. So far as the availment of loan is concerned is not disputed, then certainly what in practice happens is whenever the parties go and file, and if we have a very plausible case, then certainly okay. There are many instances in most of the matters of this nature is concerned. It is all purely technical in nature, and most of the borrowers will certainly not have a case at all. That is what happens, and in very few cases only they'll have some case with regard to having some chances of winning the matter.
Okay.
And what I would say is, in matters where the availment of loan is not disputed, only the quantum alone is being disputed.
Yes.
Normally, to strike a balance, keeping in mind of both the welfare of the borrower or the guarantor and as well as the bank, normally the DRTs pass a conditional order calling upon the applicant to deposit 20% of the amount demanded.
Before going to vote of thanks, I request Brother Dureraj to say a few words. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have done it. First of all, let me thank Mr. Ravi Minash Sundaram, our brother, to add me in this group. It's very excellent and it is very eye-opening program. It is really, Vignesh has given an overall understanding about this particular act, and it is really, he has explained everything about that. 100% of that act he has explained, and we have to go and check out anything he has missed, because that's such a, that is a bird's eye view. He has given everything. I thank everyone, especially our Vignesh too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.
Now over to Jayanti Shah to announce to go for vote of thanks. Before that, our next meeting will be on Indian Succession Act 1925. Either it will be on Friday or Saturday. So you will be getting invite. I request everyone to participate. Over to Jayanti Shah.
Good evening, all of you. I deem it great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this memorable occasion. Let me first thank you all for making this session a resounding success. First, and Mr. Vignesh, who is obliged to be our speaker for the day. My heartful thanks to all the guests for logging in and sharing their valuable inputs. Last but not least, I thank all my member friends for making this meet a great success. Thank you everyone.